Welcome to NTD China News. I'm Karen Chang. Making headlines this Tuesday, May 7th. The Pentagon says the Chinese regime has been launching cyber attacks on U.S. infrastructure. Will the Palestinian and Israeli leaders meet in Beijing? And more signs that the Chinese regime is growing wary of North Korea. China's cyber warfare in the U.S. is in the spotlight again. A U.S. congressional report came out yesterday accusing the Chinese regime of sustained attack on U.S. computers. As in previous reports, China's foreign ministry has denied the claims of state-backed computer hacking.
China has long been accused of using cyber attacks as part of its military strategy, particularly against the United States. In its annual report to Congress yesterday on the People's Liberation Army, the Pentagon placed a stronger emphasis than ever on the seriousness of these attacks.
China's military continues to explore the role of military operations in cyberspace as a feature of modern warfare and continues to develop doctrine, training, and exercises which emphasize information technology and operations. In addition, in 2012, numerous computer systems around the world, including those owned by the United States government, continued to be targeted for intrusions, some of which appear to be attributable directly to PRC government and military organizations.
Examples of such attacks include the alleged theft of blueprints for the F-35 and F-22 stealth fighter planes. The Chinese Foreign Ministry denied the accusations in the U.S. report, restating its position against hacking.
China has repeatedly stated its opposition to the so-called network attacking. China firmly opposes any form of computer hacking and is willing to have peaceful and constructive dialogues with the United States on network safety.
Despite this denial, U.S. lawmakers have described China's ever-expanding use of cyber warfare as a cornerstone of PLA operations. Earlier this year, U.S. cybersecurity company Mandiant published a report saying they had tracked a significant number of cyber attacks back to a 12-story White Tower in Shanghai. Mandiant believes the tower to be the headquarters of the People's Liberation Army Unit 61398. These allegations were also denied by China's foreign ministry. Theft of U.S. military secrets would allow China to defend against or even reverse engineer replicas of U.S. weapons. This is part of an overall military expansion. In the 83-page report, the Pentagon said that Chinese military spending had increased by almost 10% annually for the past 10 years. China announced a military budget of $114 billion in March, but the Pentagon estimates that figure could be as high as $215 billion. The U.S. military budget, however, is still far ahead, at an annual total of over $500 billion.
Two rival leaders are in China this week, the Israeli Prime Minister and Palestinian President. There has been much speculation over whether the two will meet while on their trip. Today, Mahmoud Abbas said he is willing to meet his counterpart if a few conditions are met.
The Israeli Prime Minister and Palestinian President Benjamin Netanyahu and Mahmoud Abbas are in China this week, although not traveling together. There has been speculation over whether China could host talks between the two leaders. Direct talks between Israeli and Palestinian leaders have been deadlocked for 4 years. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas says he is willing to meet with his Israeli counterpart if conditions permit.
In principle, I have no objection to meeting with Mr. Netanyahu, and if this meeting happens in China, it's also something that I would welcome. But we have not agreed to such a meeting.
But there are some preliminary criteria, says Abbas.
There are questions directed to Mr. Netanyahu about his agreement to accept a two-state solution with the 1967 borders. If he does, I have no problem meeting him anywhere.
Abbas said he and Chinese leader Xi Jinping had productive talks on the Israeli-Palestinian issue. China has sought diplomatic ties with both countries and has expressed its willingness to host peace talks.
The Chinese regime has taken another move to narrow relations with North Korea. State-run Bank of China announced today that it's closing accounts from the Foreign Trade Bank of North Korea. This follows a series of UN sanctions imposed on North Korea after its third nuclear test this February. The account closure was not directly tied to those sanctions, though. The US imposed its own sanctions on the bank following the UN embargo, saying the Foreign Trade Bank is responsible for providing funds for Pyongyang's nuclear plans. Analysts say Beijing is sending another signal that it's growing tired of its ally. The Chinese regime has long been North Korea's biggest economic and political support, but the recent nuclear test and Pyongyang's belligerent threats have strained tensions. Earlier this March, dozens of bank accounts thought to belong to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un were found in China, according to a South Korean newspaper. Those accounts contained hundreds of millions of dollars. Despite US and South Korea pressure, China refused to close those accounts in its banks. Last week, a group of doctors were in the UK to talk about China's organ transplant system. Since 2006, allegations that the Chinese regime is using prisoners of conscience for their organs have been investigated. Researchers now believe there is significant evidence to substantiate these claims.
Prisoners of conscience killed for their organs. Allegations that the Chinese Communist Party has been carrying out these criminal acts surfaced in 2006. Now, more and more people are finding out, and it's drawing strong reactions.
Shocked, more than anything. But I knew that forced organ harvesting was going on, but I wasn't quite aware of the scale of it and how it's all driven by money, and it's a bit sickening.
Global medical advocacy group Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting organized this panel at the Leeds University in the UK on May 3rd. Independent researchers Ethan Gutman and David Kilgore were there to speak about abuses inside China's prison system. Both have investigated and concluded that the Chinese regime gets the bulk of the organs used in the country's transplant system from prisoners of conscience, including Tibetans, Uyghurs, and in particular, Falun Gong practitioners.
I was sick to my stomach. I sort of like my blood level shivered to know that something like this, something like a Holocaust sort of movement, even worse than Holocaust, something still exists in the 21st century.
Part of the problem is the international demand for organs that has made it such a lucrative trade. Countries like Taiwan, Australia, and Israel have already started to address the issue. In 2008, an Israeli doctor successfully lobbied for the ban of medical insurance for transplant operations done in China. Since then, Israeli patients have stopped traveling there for organs.
I feel that it is our responsibility, the UK, France, and all the countries all over the world, to put pressure on China. I believe we can do a lot, and we need to get a mass mobilization of people across the world to stop these atrocities.
One way to do this, according to Priscilla, is to help groups like Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting spread the word.
Social media, start tweeting it, start Facebooking it, let everyone more aware of it and get more people involved on it. And informing people is like the first thing I can do. That's the only thing I can do straight away right now.
NTD News, Leeds University, UK.
And coming up after the break, Chinese citizens appeal to the White House over a poisoning case that happened almost 2 decades ago. The Chinese regime sends a large fleet of fishing vessels to disputed waters, and find out what these bicycles are made out of. And welcome back. The Chinese regime is continuing to make its presence felt in the ongoing territorial dispute over the South China Sea. State-run media reports that more than 30 Chinese fishing vessels have gone to the Spratly Islands, which are claimed by Taiwan, Brunei, Philippines, Vietnam, and of course, China. The fleet left on Monday for a 40-day trip. Vietnam and the Philippines have complained that the Chinese regime has been increasingly aggressive, asserting itself in territorial disputes either diplomatically or through actually harassing their fishermen. Upgrades to China's naval capacity in recent years have only added to tension. The Philippines have called for UN intervention and arbitration to settle the sovereignty disputes, something the Chinese regime has vowed not to abide. It's been 19 years since Tsinghua University student Zhu Ling was poisoned with a chemical that left her paralyzed and brain damaged. And now there are new calls for an investigation to find out who's responsible. But the leader Chinese citizens are appealing to is far away from the mainland.
A high-profile case of a Chinese student poisoned nearly 20 years ago is making headlines again, landing at the foot of the White House. Back in 1994, Tsinghua University student Zhu Ling was poisoned with a powerful chemical called thallium. It damaged her central nervous system, leaving her nearly paralyzed and brain damaged. Many believe Zhu's college roommate Sun Wei was responsible, but she was never charged. Some think this is because of her family ties. Her grandfather was a close friend of former Chinese leader Jiang Zemin, and her father's cousin was the deputy mayor of Beijing. Sun now lives in the United States, and Chinese citizens are appealing to the U.S. government. This petition on the official White House petition page, We the People, received more than 100,000 electronic signatures in just 3 days. And a petition only needs 25,000 signatures for the Obama administration to be obligated to respond.
Even though a lot of people suspect Sun Wei, I didn't sign the petition to say she was guilty, but I want the Chinese government to investigate. If things like this are allowed to happen, then no one is safe. If the law is enforced, it can't protect people.
With the renewed interest in the case, Chinese censors are going to work. Search terms Zhu Ling and Sun Wei have now been blocked on the popular Sina Weibo microblog.
Sun's family background, especially under China's political system, is something that everyone is interested in. The U.S. should be watching too, because someone suspected of a crime like this could pose a big security threat.
The topic is now trending on Chinese internet. Some have mocked the country's legal system for not properly investigating the case. Caijing Magazine deputy managing editor Luo Changping writes, quote, "The White House website is now the China State Bureau for Letters and Calls. That's the office that's meant to address citizens' complaints." Aside from calling for a new investigation, the petition is also urging the U.S. to deport Sun Wei.
China has reported 4 more deaths from the mysterious H7N9 bird flu virus. Authorities did not provide many details about the latest cases, only that 2 were from eastern Jiangsu province, another from Zhejiang province, and 1 more from China's central Anhui province. Today, the head of the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said that he did not believe the virus in its current form could create a pandemic. Speaking with Reuters in New York, Dr. Thomas Frieden did say there is a possibility the virus could mutate, and only a small mutation could allow it to spread from person to person. These latest fatalities bring the reported death toll to 31 out of 129 known cases in mainland China. What do bamboo and carbon fiber have in common? Find out in this next story at China's annual bicycle fair, currently going on in Shanghai.
It's time to gear up for China Cycle 2013. It's the 23rd International Bicycle and Motor Fair. This year's fair spun into action on Monday in Shanghai. At least 1,300 companies from 24 countries are showing off the latest in bike design, from the collapsible to the conceptual. This one is made with bamboo, one of the most versatile plants on the planet. These bikes are made from carbon fiber. Not only are they super lightweight, they're also super strong.
Carbon fiber bicycles are more common in competitions and more popular among professional athletes because they are lighter and it is easier for cyclists to really use their power. They are more suitable for competition.
China used to be known for fleets of bicyclists pedaling their way around major cities. But now the car is king, and that means traffic congestion and pollution, and it's causing a biking renaissance. This renewed awareness of bicycling is more than just a means of transport, but also a means of fun. So cycle up. China Cycle ends May 9th, but the roads go on forever.
And that's all for this broadcast of NTD China News. For more of our China content, visit our website at NTD.tv or subscribe to our YouTube channel, NTD on China. Coming up next is China Focus with Shali Zhang. Stay tuned.